Next, we're going to look at how the mainline and tax line impact our NetSuite saved search results. By default, when we run a transaction saved search in NetSuite, it's going to include all of the transaction lines, being the header, any line level items that need to be considered, and any tax lines as well. We can actually set criteria to produce the results that we need. Let's jump into NetSuite and take a closer look. So navigating to our saved search results, the first thing that we'll want to do is remove our criteria for mainline is true. When we run the results, we now see 4 line items for this particular transaction. You might question why we have 4 line items. Well, we know we have the header level information in one line. We have the line level information in one line because we only had one line item on the invoice. And then we had one amount for tax, being the $500. So where does the 4th line come from? Let's jump into the invoice itself to figure out why. So taking a closer look at the invoice, we will always have one line for the header level information. In this case, we have one line, so add another line for this item. Now coming to the summary section, we see why there's 2 additional lines in our saved search results. One of them is to capture the tax for our GST HST tax. And now because this is a Canadian dollar invoice, we have a 4th line for the PST. And it just so happens in this case that the PST value is 0. So coming back to our saved search results, we're going to see that the 3rd line down here has a bunch of zeros. And that's because it's referencing the PST tax on the invoice, which in this case is 0. Let's jump back to the presentation now to see how we can manipulate the saved search criteria to get different results. So as we saw earlier, if we set the main line is true, the saved search results are typically going to show us 1 line per transaction. The exception to that is NetSuite journal entries. And the reason for that is that NetSuite treats each journal entry line as a main line. So watch out for that. We can also manipulate the tax line criteria on our saved search. If we add that criteria and set tax line equals true, NetSuite is only going to show us the tax lines on the transaction. So for our current saved search, it would show 2 lines, one for the GST tax, another for the PST tax. Now, if we set the criteria to tax line as false, NetSuite is going to show us all of the non-tax line items. In other words, any header and line level lines that need to be considered. And then we can actually combine the mainline and tax line criteria. So if we set mainline to false and tax line to false, NetSuite is going to show us all of the non-tax line items only. So in this case, for our saved search, it's only going to show 1 line. Let's jump back into NetSuite and prove that. So let's go ahead and modify our saved search criteria. We're going to set mainline to false, and we're going to set tax line false. And now when we run the results, we're going to see that only 1 line item is available. And in this case, it's the $10,000 US being the line level value.